It's time to talk about solutions. It's time to share the vision. It's time to dig deep and find ways to heal and embrace the current changes to our world. I am your host, Crystal Storm, and in this podcast, I interview James Panther, shamanic and evolutionary astrologer. We talk openly and honestly about the challenges that masculinity is facing right now, why this change is necessary and has been a long time in coming, what it looks like on the other side, and what we can expect for the rest of the year. This is the WooWoo Hour. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I know you have missed having the WooWoo Hour in your ears. I know, it's okay. It's always my goal to bring you the show as often as possible, but I am just super freaking picky with guests, y'all. Like, I'm just so picky. It's a blessing and it's a curse. Because I'm reminded how amazing it is that I'm so discerning about guests when I have amazing conversations like I did with this week's guest, with James. He is amazing. You know, I really resonate with the way he brings information. No surprise, he is an astrologer. You guys know that I love my astrologers, but there is a wonderful perspective and insight that they share with us that I think it really behooves us to listen to and to figure out how we can apply it in our lives, especially with so many crazy things going on. It's just, Jesus Christ, it's nonstop. It's just nonstop. So anyway, take time for self-care, y'all. Self-care is so important. So important. So important. Anyway, so some very quick updates before we get into this amazing Woo Hour episode. I know I say that every time I'm here, but whatever, it is amazing. As always, you can find all the content I produce, not just this podcast, but the writing. I am very deep into Sonarchy Book 3, and I am sharing my entire creative process with that. That is from shitty rough draft to polished manuscript to my author notes to the research that I do, all of it from start to finish. You can find it over on my website, inthemindofcrystalstorm.com. If you want to connect with me, the easiest way to do that is over on Twitter. That is the social media platform that I am most active on. You can get at me at Writer Streamer. I am also moderating a fantastic podcast weekly. It is called The Who Would Win Show. This is a debate that pretty much matches up characters from comics and movies and pop culture. And it's a debate about who would win in a fight. You know, it's Luke Skywalker versus Spider-Man, and Nightcrawler versus Predator, and Bizarro versus Megatron, and amazing matchups like that, and Captain America versus Batman, and all that kind of stuff. So go and check them out. It's fun. It's a really great, relaxing kind of step away from everything and listen to this hilarious podcast when you're done listening to the Woo Hour. Listen to the Woo Hour first, get all woo-woo, get all deep, get all up in your feelings and shit, and then go have some fun over at Who Would Win. You can check out their website, designed by me, by the way, at whowouldwinshow.com, and then you can follow them on Twitter, same name, Who Would Win Show. They're awesome. I love them. I interviewed James and Jay on this podcast. They were great guests as well, had a lot of great insight to share. Jay with his writing, and James with his perspective on the entertainment industry and bullying and that sort of thing. So that was a really great conversation with both of those guys. So my last few updates here, I am turning my first 2 Sonarchy novels into audiobooks, which is super exciting. They will be released October 15th. If you pre-order them now, you will get an exclusive piece of artwork from the Sonarchy world that will not be available anywhere else. This artwork is exclusive to the Sonarchy series, and it's exclusive to pre-orders, so I'm really excited about it. I think it looks great. I think you guys will really like it. You go over to the bookstore on inthemindofcrystalstorm.com, and you can pre-order both audiobooks for $35. You get both of them, and you get an exclusive piece of artwork. And then the audiobooks release on the 15th of October. So if you like science fiction with a blend of conspiracy theory and the metaphysical, then you will really, really enjoy the Sonarchy series. And I'm excited about book 3 and book 4 and deep into the future of that. So the last thing I want to share with you guys before I share this episode with you is that I just kind of want to say, and I want to give my love this week to all the women that are, silently reliving their trauma and working through it all over again. it we see you, and my love goes out to you because I understand, because I'm kind of going through the same thing. And I also want to give my love to all the men this week that have held space for these women in any way you could. If someone, just a female friend, or it doesn't even have to be just someone in your life that just had that heavy dose of femininity in them, and they just kind of freaked out on you, and you really didn't understand why, but at the same time you still kind of held space for them because you instinctively knew that you just needed to just thank you, just absolutely thank you for that. And we're going to get really into that this talk this week with James. Guys, I don't want you to feel picked on, because as soon as we say masculinity, guys, oh my god, like don't I really hope that especially men, you listen to this episode and you really enjoy it. And I hope that James helps you kind of resonate with healthy expressions of it. There's an understanding here of what people are going through, but it is a necessary change. This has to happen, and we need to be open to this change. We need to understand where we're resisting it. We need to understand why we're resisting it, and we need to figure out where we can heal. This is evolution, guys. This is about us doing better than we have done, and this isn't going to stop. And this is us trying to figure out how to process these feelings, this guilt, this shame. For women, it's a lot of rage, and I know guys feel really picked on right now, but you need it. This is something that needs to happen. It is a long time coming, and James and I really get into it, and we get really honest with it, and hopefully you guys are finding the help that you need. Women and men too. You're finding circles and places. I know some people are like, oh my God, safe spaces. But really, this is what it's about: finding a safe space where you can say to, your men friends, hey, I'm really confused about this. I don't understand this, and you can have healthy, honest conversations where you can make the changes that you need to make, or just get a perspective that you didn't get before. We have to go into this with empathy and with love and with compassion for each other. And we got to figure this out, because this isn't going away, and this is a change that is ongoing, and it needs to happen for the betterment of us, for all of us. So, and change is messy. All right, guys, let's get into this episode. I love your faces. I am hopefully going to bring the WooWoo Hour podcast next month. I am looking for some more fun woo-woo guests. I have some ideas in mind. But again, like you guys know, I'm really, really, really very discerning with the guests that I bring on this show. So if we're not back until November, I love you. I'm trying. I promise I will get this podcast out as soon and as often as possible, because I really love having these one-on-one conversations with these amazing people. I will talk to you all again very soon. All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the WooWoo Hour podcast. And I know I say this every time, but yet again, I am super excited for our guest today. We have James Panther on. He is a shamanic and evolutionary astrologer. He is also a musician. He's based out of Portland, Oregon, and he has a YouTube channel, which is where I found James. Sometimes you just dive into like YouTube holes, but then you find a great hole. And I think I spent a good hour just watching his videos, and just being really impressed with how he communicated. His YouTube channel is Astrology for the People, a name I also loved. One of the reasons why I stuck around. He's just got a really great, engaging manner. And he talks about things that I think are really, really relevant. So it's not just astrology. I think he finds a really great way to link up the astrology to what's going on, and makes it very personal for his YouTube watchers and anybody who is listening. So one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have him on the podcast today. James, how are you? And thank you for being here.
Hey, Crystal, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. Living the dream, right?
Yes, excellent.
Indeed, indeed, indeed.
The
All right.
woo-woo team.
It is. We're so woo-woo around here. We're so woo-woo.
Yes.
So, James, before we've got some really great topics on the table today. So before we kind of dive into those, let's talk a little bit about you. I kind of want to introduce you a little bit more to my listeners and to anybody who's kind of not familiar with your work. So how did we go from this wonderful creativity of being a musician to diving into astrology? How did that happen?
Well, it was actually my first band formation, like maybe, I guess, like 12 years ago now. My guitar player was this really rad chick who was very, very deeply into astrology and guessed my sun, moon, and rising sign accurately. And I found this out because I asked my parents what time I was born, and
Hmm.
I found out that she was right. And, um, I just, realizing that astrology is not some like super reductive, obnoxious, like overly simplistic, thing that you read in a magazine, but is actually this really unendingly deep and complex, like very intense and comprehensive study of like the human psyche and you know mythology and human experience of thousands of years, and that every planet is in a different sign, and every planet is a psycho-spiritual function or facet of the psyche and the soul. And so it went from being this like, yeah, I guess I know I'm a Capricorn, to being like, whoa, like I have all these other signs and there's all these other sides to me. And it sort of became this tool of self-understanding, and I just got pretty obsessed with it and just like dove into just studying on my own. And just started pulling up charts for my friends and
Hmm.
just studying people. Honestly, I think because I was always like a sensitive kind of weird kid, and I was bullied a lot in
Hmm.
grade school, and then I was like, I'm queer and I'm a musician, and so just like definitely on the fringes or the more like alternative side of culture. It became this way to understand people, and it became this way to like just look at patterns. I think that's so much of what astrology is. And for all like the naysayers about astrology out there, it's kind of like, well, you just end up seeing like, oh yeah, people who are Scorpios kind of just have this undertone to them, or just like when Venus is in Pisces, it really just lends this dreaminess to the personality, and then you just start to kind of make sense of things with that as a lens.
I would agree with that. Absolutely would agree with that. I think astrology, I mean, better than, the stuff that you read in like the newspapers or when you pick up Cosmo magazine or something like that. But when you delve into the depth of astrology, there's just so much information, just how you can understand your friends, how you can understand your relationships, how you can understand business relationships, when to take advantage of certain things. I know before we even, you and I even sat down, you were like, well, let's wait until this time and let this pass. And I was like, yes, I feel that absolutely. So it
Yeah.
just, in general, it's just such a great tool that I feel like is so underutilized.
Yeah, well, and I feel like so much of what's awesome about astrology, I think, is really when we get into studying astrology, I think we have the capacity to really begin to live life from a more intuitive place. And
Hmm.
we're in such a a left brain, linear, logical, mercurial, patriarchal
Hmm.
civilization that really undervalues like feminine process, not in terms of gender necessarily, although that's part of I know what we want to talk about today, um, but really just in terms of like having that inner authority, having that inner intuitive authority. And when you begin to understand yourself on an archetypal level, you really begin to notice that there are ebbs and flows to energies in the universe at all times. And you can either be kind of like going with the current, or, paddling upstream and exhausting yourself. And I think that in general, so much of what I'm getting out of astrology, the more I dive into it, is just realizing how much the planets are constantly asking us to kind of come back into ourselves and have
Hmm.
more time for reflection, more time for um, gestation, and these aspects of life that are mysterious, that aren't linear and logical and about doing. Um, and that, I mean, that might be a good segue into talking about Mars and masculine energy and stuff, and all the stuff that I was making videos about this summer. Uh,
Yeah, you
but
know what? Let's do that because I feel like, oh God, this summer has been so interesting and so heavy. I was
yeah,
talking to some astrologers. Yeah, it's crazy. At the beginning of the year, and something that really stuck with me was like, this is going to be a slow and steady marathon all year. And the
yeah,
summer has really just felt like almost just running in place. Like you
yeah.
needed to do it because you needed to level up your stamina, but at the same time, it was like, Jesus Christ, can things just happen already because I've got bills, So it was, so it's
Uh,
really just, it was frustrating, but at the same time, it was a lot of like, go internal, slow down. What are you
Yeah.
doing? Look at the process. Look at the process. It was like just
Mm.
being beaten into our heads, whether we wanted to listen to it or not. So let's
Right.
talk a
Right.
little bit, about that, because especially like that was happening, and then all this stuff was getting exposed just in
Yeah.
general. So it
Uh,
was just
uh,
like transformation, but
for sure.
think about it.
Absolutely. Well, I would say, like, first of all, 2018 in general is Jupiter Scorpio year. So, Jupiter went into Scorpio last uh, October of 17, and it moves into Sagittarius out of Scorpio this November. So we've only got another couple months of this Jupiter Scorpio, but one of my mentors has called it the year of alchemical transformation, because Scorpio has to do with death. Scorpio has to do with releasing and letting go, and it's really the place in the zodiac where the ego dies, and it's the birth of transpersonal consciousness then through that death. So, and it's like, for those of you who are into the tarot as well, it's like the death card in the tarot. It doesn't mean you actually physically die necessarily, but it means like old attitudes, old beliefs, old attachments die. And what does that look like? It looks like grief, like grieving, releasing something that's a very taboo emotional expression in our culture. Um, and uh, and so then on top of that, this summer, then we had this Mars retrograde. And when a planet goes retrograde, it's all about, an internal expression. And that's really uncomfortable for masculine energy,
Hmm.
masculine energy in terms of, again, in terms of universal energy force of this yang rather than the yin or feminine. It's this doing, getting ahead, pushing forward, making stuff happen. It's like the adrenaline in your veins. So when there's a Mars retrograde, it's like can be this internalized anger, and processing a lot of old stuff, particularly because this Mars retrograde happened exactly conjunct the south node of the moon. So now we're getting into this evolutionary component of like the north node, which is, it's always a polarity. I don't know exactly how much everyone listening knows about astrology, but the north node is always that point where we're evolving towards that place, and the south node is where we're releasing. So to have Mars retrograde, this redoing, rethinking our actions, reconsidering how we're trying to move it forward, and then also needing to purge that thing, because the south node has to do with purging and releasing anyway. Jupiter Scorpio has to do with purging and releasing. Then we had this Mercury retrograde square Jupiter, which is about reconsidering and purging and releasing. I mean, it's just been like absolutely absurd. And what I was really, and at the same time as that, we had Uranus. Uranus is square the nodes for the rest of this year into next year, and has been so since the summer. And that's about awakening. That's about a deep prompting for us to wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And
What a
that can be, it's
message.
hard. Yeah, it's hard to sleep. It's like hard to,
Oh,
because your
yeah.
subconscious is like firing, you know, something new at you every day about like, did you remember this about your soul and why you came to the prison? Like, what needs to? It's just like, fuck, man, I'm trying to sleep, we can't sleep. Uranus is about awakening, and it's really hitting us in, Taurus is like the physical body and your sense of self worth and how you make your money. You were talking about bills and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
Jupiter Scorpio can be these big losses, or big gains. I really think it's all about surrender in general. So surrendering to that which you can't see. And what do we need to do in order to surrender? We have to trust. And that's a much higher vibration of Scorpio. And Jupiter is about luck and growth and expansions. So I think that's really been hopefully the saving grace, and can get people through the next couple months too. Just I've been really just feeling viscerally lately when we have the capacity to surrender, especially because this Jupiter is trining Neptune, which is about releasing and dissolving. Um, you know, we're able to let go of what no longer serves, and we're also able to receive
Hmm.
what we really need and what we were maybe unable to receive before we learned how to surrender and let go, because we were so kind of attached to needing to do things a certain way. um, so yeah, I mean, this summer was just, I think, so much about reconsidering. And really, I think that you sent me an email specifically when I was talking about, this Mars retrograde conjunct the south node being about purging toxic masculinity.
Hmm.
And then and then Mars, it's made like three different conjunctions to the south node. One was in direct motion, the second one was in retrograde motion, and we're about to have the third one in a couple weeks. So then also about, well, if we're purging toxic masculinity, we still need Mars. We can't just throw Mars away. And this is what I would
Right.
say to all the man haters out there.
We can't do that either. We can't do that either. Like there
Get
has
rid
to
of
be balance.
that. We gotta work with divine masculinity. And so and that can be really hard for people because we don't really have a lot of examples necessarily, or they're not really that far out where we can see them, or I just want us to, as a collective, human consciousness, begin to understand more how to differentiate what is toxic masculinity and what is, divine or healthy masculinity, so we can really distinguish masculinity as a very neutral energy force from patriarchy. And that's really challenging to tease out when so many of the leaders and
Oh
men
God.
in positions of power seem to just have no regard or respect for women and for feminine process.
At
And for
all.
for things that come from the earth and things that need gestation and time. And this was, I think, our collective challenge through the summer, to just, how do we as a society not sort of try so hard to just push and do. And it's like, with the North Node in Leo, come from the heart. How do we come from the heart? How do we have the courage to just be who we are and let that authentic light shine? It's always risky. um
Very and scary as well.
yeah.
I want to backtrack just a little bit because you've said so many kind of amazing things.
Tangent.
And yeah, no, it's good. No, it was beautiful. I loved it. I loved it so much. You said so many things that resonated, especially about, because I'm a Scorpio. So,
Right on.
and I'm always do go, and you know how hard it is, like trust for a Scorpio. So you said surrender, and I'm thinking in my, well, how the fuck do I do that? What am I surrendering to? And like, all that, right? And literally what I've been working on this summer too. So it's been great. But at the same time, I kind of love what you said as well about coming from the heart, and I think that's so important, especially when we tackle these issues. Because on the one hand, the Me Too has been wonderful. It absolutely has been, because we needed to shine a light on this. We needed to say, "Hey, this isn't fucking cool. How do we fix it?" But I feel like humanity, we're so extreme. It's like we go from one side, and instead of just swinging the pendulum and stopping it in the middle, and then we immediately go to the other side. So now everything, is all about that. And, and I understand that it just in
Yeah.
the conversations that I've had with men, just about, when I speak out about certain things and kind of the pushback I get, what I'm kind of seeing and I'm feeling in all of that is there's a lot of anger. And I
Hmm.
think it comes from being afraid of the change.
Oh yeah.
That literally is what and it's almost like, and and sometimes I can actually talk to them, and sometimes they're just angry trolls and I just can't deal with it. But my question is kind of always, like, what are you afraid of? Like, what? Because it's hard, but you vent to your friends, but when you're talking to these people, like, you try to understand, like, where is this coming from? Like, what
Yeah.
is the fear? What is
Mm.
going on? So I mean, I think we can all kind of maybe define what toxic masculinity is. But your
Hmm.
video, Reclaiming the Divine Masculine, I love so much, because you talked about how masculinity is important and we need it. So when we're not being like these douchebags that are just like, fuck the planet, fuck women, I'm awesome, what does it look like?
Totally. Well, gosh, yeah, there's so much to
I
say to
know.
that too.
I know.
So
It's big.
yeah, like I want to talk about divine masculinity for sure, but I also want to start by saying, like, I am so grateful that the Me Too movement has happened, and I identify as like a spiritual feminist,
Hmm.
um, because I think a lot of like academic feminism can just be like heady and a little pretentious and a little sort of
A
like,
little bit. A
I
little
don't
bit.
know,
And it's
it
like
just
snobby. It's weird.
it's a little snobby, or it's just,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a lot of there's a lot of privilege that goes into just even knowing a lot of that terminology. It's I find it's a lot of like well-intentioned white folks who just
Hmm.
want to call everything technically what it should be, and it's also an attempt to really use the mental energy to sort of combat oppression, which is totally legit. It
Hmm.
just, I think it kind of goes, sometimes it's a little disconnected from the heart. And frankly, I think that's a lot of what we've all been challenged with this south node in Aquarius is so like kind of it rules the atmosphere and even outer space. So there's this way that Aquarius energy can really come at things from a way that is overly detached. And
Hmm.
so not centered in Leo in the heart. I find that there's not a lot of vulnerability or emotionality in a lot of feminism and in call out culture. And
Right. Yeah.
in
It's
in a
angry
certain
too.
it's super angry, and
Yeah.
hey, listen, it's fucking legit that it's
Right.
so angry. Like, women have
Right.
been dealing with so much bullshit for like thousands of years. We
It's been a long
burned
fucking time. Right.
we burned witches, and they were herbalists. Like, they were like the sweet ladies in the forest who were like maybe tantric priestesses and like
Hmm.
just worshiping the earth mother, and like, oh, I know this plant will heal you. Like, burn the witch. Like, that is crazy. So like, just misogyny in general is fucking crazy. And so I just shout out to like all the women and all the trans people and all the queer people and all the people of color who are just like rising up at this moment and demanding more respect. And the fact that stuff is more mainstream now is super amazing and super exciting. And also shout out to all the men who are like waking up and becoming conscious, because it's super
Yes.
uncomfortable to let go of how
Yes.
things have been, especially when you've been the one with a lot of power and privilege. And that, like, honestly, that like no one, it's not like, I have power and privilege as a white cisgendered male.
Hmm.
I didn't
Hmm.
ask for that power and privilege, but I have it in a corrupt society that favors white
Yeah.
cisgendered men.
That's
Uh,
really hard for people to accept too as well. It's almost like
it's
there's a lot of
tough.
guilt associated with that. So
Yeah,
when people like
right.
deny they have that privilege, that's what I kind of hear. It's what you feel,
Yeah,
it's that I don't really want it because I feel guilty about it. So I'm just going to deny I have it at all. Like it doesn't
sure.
exist.
Yeah, and I'll just share a personal example actually. Like, so because I'm queer and because I was bullied a lot as a kid and because like I just didn't see reflections of myself like in the culture very much, I spent a lot of time in my 20s in, radical queer feminist community where I felt really safe to sort of express my feminine side. And then when I started working with ayahuasca, I've done a lot of healing work with that medicine. Um, that actually what happened, this is a grandmother, feminine plant spirit, and it really got me in touch with my authentic masculinity. And I was sitting with mostly straight people, and
Hmm.
there were all these straight guys who I was afraid of and who were my abusers and my oppressors, as a child.
Hmm.
um, and made me feel like really afraid and shamed and all these things, socially scapegoated. um, there were these straight guys helping me through like my like dark nights of the soul,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I kind of regenerated this masculinity within my being, seeing all these examples of really kind, compassionate masculinity around me. And that was like, I started doing that like maybe 7 years ago. So I've for a long time, and then I would go back to my my queer, feminist communities
Hmm.
with all this like newly regenerated masculine energy, and I was really triggering people because I
Wow.
didn't realize, because suddenly I was in touch with the privilege that I didn't even know I had with my masculinity and my expression of masculinity, and sort of this, so we can talk a little bit about what that is, just this clear, forward moving. It's a lot of what I said about Mars, but it's like it's directive, it's containing, it's supposed to support the feminine, which is about creating life and nourishing life, and the masculine just kind of like holds you know holds her in support and kind of directs and moves things where they need to go, but is really listening to the feminine ideally, because the feminine is so visionary and all these things. So the masculine can be visionary too in its own way, but the feminine more from like a life on life's terms sort of a place.
Right.
Um, and so as I kind of came into more of my masculine energy, I realized I was triggering people, and then there were ways that you know, uh, there's only so many, what programs of like sacred, beautiful, healthy, divine masculinity does any dude fucking have access to? Like,
Right.
riddle me that, you know.
Exactly. Like, where do
So
you guys go to figure that
where
out?
the hell do guys go to figure out how to be good guys?
Right.
So I feel like I had to come up against a lot of people who like were my friends and who felt like safety to me, turn and be like, you're being entitled, you're being like male privilege, you're being the embodiment of patriarchy. And I'm just like, whoa, projection. And also, you have a point. Holy shit, I never stopped to think about me. Suddenly I come into this very organic, expression of my masculine energy after being like so intensely connected to the feminine for so long. And now you're really triggered by me because you have wounds around masculine energy. So I really think that the key to all this is like self-responsibility for everyone involved.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Self-responsibility. And that is not blame, that is not self-hate or like I'm doing it wrong. Responsibility, just like, okay, I'm triggered. And this is emotional intelligence. And this is what I spent the summer learning down in Costa Rica from Teal Swan, actually. Just this emotional intelligence process of just, okay, I'm triggered. When was the first time I felt this way? All of the triggers that show up in our realities and have to do with things that happened to us previously. So if we're reacting to something, it's probably because it happened in early childhood and we haven't processed it yet because it wasn't safe to process it. So compassion, 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 it's like for yourself, being patient with yourself, not feeling guilty, just being able to be like, yeah, you know what? I said something really problematic. I said something like kind of that offended some people. Okay. Like, I am not my thoughts. I am not my words. I'm responsible for my thoughts and my words, but that's not who I am. So it's almost like we can disidentify just a little bit and like just be able to be coachable. But it's humbling. It's humbling. I think that's really uncomfortable for a lot of men because they don't even know that, like, most men don't even understand what privilege is or feels like because it's just so instinctive to have it
Hmm.
that it just sounds
Exactly.
like this sort of postmodern annoying abstraction, especially for like a lot of the alt-right dudes, you know,
Right.
who are
Just
just
a
like, what
leftist thing. Another
you
leftist thing. More SJWs, all that stuff. Right.
they just think it's a bunch of like liberal like heady bullshit, and unfortunately the way that a lot of liberals talk about it,
Hmm.
myself included at times, like it can sound like it's this heady thing. It's just like, what are you even saying? But it's like it's really, we've got to drop into a more emotionally intelligent place and a nuanced place. And when you really start to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's a person of color and you hear a microaggression, and what that feels like, just like, oh, it just doesn't really feel like you see me as a human and respect me, or it feels like you're tokenizing me. It's just like, oh, it's for us to really put ourselves in each other's shoes, for us to have empathy, for us to just develop more sensitivity, which I see all under the umbrella of feminine process. um, that's really where the power is right now. That's really where the evolution is right now, for us to be like, oh, right, like you're a person with a heart that fucking bleeds, and I am too, and like that doesn't feel good, I don't
Right.
like. So and for us to really be able to admit, like, ooh, if I heard that thing that I just said to that person, then that might not feel good to me, especially considering that person's life experience, like what they went through. I have no idea what this woman who's lashing out at me on Facebook went through, who's calling me a misogynist. You know,
Right. Right.
maybe she's a sexual abuse survivor and no one's ever been able to hold her rage. And she's the
Absolutely.
first time that
Absolutely.
she's actually, able to say anything. Like, women need to scream, queers need to cry, like
Yeah.
there's there's so much emotional cleansing and releasing that needs to happen. And I think that we're just starting to this year understand with Jupiter and Scorpio, like how deep that need really is.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I got tangential
No,
again. So
that's
feel
okay. That was good. It was such an excellent. I really love what you said about emotional intelligence, because I
mm,
think that's really where we're evolving to. I mean, especially for men. I mean, yes, women absolutely. We need to scream and put our foot down, and there's a responsibility that we have too to kind of figure this out and figure out who we are without the patriarchy. Like what how we want to share that vision in a healthy way, and how can we process this well-deserved anger, but also in a healthy way as well. And I also want us to have that kind of compassion for men, as
yeah,
difficult as it is,
yeah,
because we can have these discussions kind of in our circles with other women, but I
mm,
feel like it's a whole different scenario for guys. It really,
yeah,
really is. I've seen, some men start to kind of speak out about being vulnerable. And I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Brene Brown, but she speaks about
oh
that as
yeah,
well, like the power. And I love what she says about it too, because I feel like she comes from it from like a very kind of left
oh
brain type situation. So she really brings it down to a level that I
what,
appreciate for everybody
yeah.
who's like, what is this
What's
emotional shit we're talking about?
what's dope about Renee is that my favorite soccer mom shaman, she is
Hmm.
just she's a Scorpio.
I love it.
She Yeah, she is this beautiful cultural example of the left brain surrendering.
Yes. Oh my
You
God.
know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, the way that she presents everything is just like, this is what a left scientific logical brain realizing that there's more to life than that looks like when it softens and it learns trust and surrender.
Yes.
And actually just to what you were talking about earlier, like how the fuck does a Scorpio do trust? And it's like, well, you've got all these different archetypes associated with Scorpio itself. So there's also like the we all know about the scorpion, that vindictive little sucker. um and we know about like the snake energy and the
Hmm.
kundalini rising, and
Oh
and
yeah.
that has to do with self mastery and transformation. So does the phoenix rising from
Oh,
the
I've had
ashes.
so many amazing dreams about snakes lately. Holy crap.
Oh yeah. And like the eagle flying above everything, it has to do with self mastery. And what can happen when you trust something is I think it means we need to have a healthier relationship with the divine and
Yes.
what our conception of creator is, because I think that trust happens when you really start to build a sense of trust in the universe itself and life itself and sort of higher consciousness. And a lot of times we don't trust because of what happened in early childhood, and so then we're back to like I think that the
Dealing with
complete
wounds.
process is so important in just being able to deal with those wounds and to own them. It's just like, okay, I don't trust. Why don't I trust? Because it
Right.
just feels like this is going to happen and this happened. Okay, well, when was the first time, and how does this feel in the body? Where's the body showing me this? And for us to really reclaim our power there. um yeah.
I wish more people understood that, because I think so many times when we're trying to do, this internal work, and I think this is especially hard for just older white men because they kind of come from that generation too. I was talking about this with my best friend because her father's a great guy, absolutely wonderful, but he's that type of guy that would like go have heart surgery and then like drive himself home from the hospital, right? He's not
Oh,
the we're gonna snuggle and like, you don't go to therapy for your issues, you man up and you figure it out. But at the
yeah.
same time, he's like this loving, gentle, would do everything for his, family type of dude. So it's like this very, very interesting, like, like you see, he's like so hard to figure out sometimes too.
Totally.
Like he's like this super like all of a sudden alt right, but I'm like this 5 foot tall bisexual Puerto Rican half black girl that dated his daughter for a while that he loved. So like, who are you? Like what?
Totally.
You don't make any sense. So like at all. So it's just like it's there's a simplicity in this, but it's so deep and there's so much to unpack. And I feel like, as hard as it is for, for women to be figuring this out and breaking out of the patriarchy, I have
Mm,
this compassion for men who are also trying to
mm.
figure this out and
Thank
find the
you.
role models. And and because
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing to be support. Like I've had so many just amazing dudes in my life that I've dated or that I've interacted with. And kind of as Me Too came out, I was reflecting
Mm,
back on those experiences. And I've also had some very dark ones that have probably fucked me up,
mhm.
and I need to have more therapy. So it's like so I can
Sure.
kind of see it from both sides. So, I
Yeah.
just, it's why one of the reasons why I want to talk to you is, what are some steps that if you're kind of one of those dudes that was like, you know what, I think I've been this person, and whatever kind of shape that takes. What do you do? Where do you go? How do you start the conversations with your friends?
Yeah. I think it's just, I would say vulnerability, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's, to, you know, thanks
Cry,
for,
dude. Just have a good
you know,
cry.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, people need to cry in general. I mean, I think that, that, man, I mean,
I know.
having friends that you can trust
Mm-hmm.
to just be like, hey, listen, like, I think I might have been an asshole. And
Mm-hmm.
like, and I don't know what to do. Like, just I think it's humility, like
Mm-hmm.
humility and vulnerability. And I think inherent in humility, it doesn't mean you need to like go to the extreme of like self-flagellation. And now we're getting
Right.
into like kind of like the negatives of like the Virgo archetype or like humility, and the sun's in Virgo right now with Mercury. So we can you don't I don't think there's like shame is is not productive. And so to feel like I'm a horrible person for saying something that offended somebody, um, isn't productive. But to begin to look at like, wow, this person's like really offended, to actually just kind of open your heart, like it's like dare to open your heart and see the impact that you've had on another person. I think it has to start there. I don't know how we're going to do this without some empathy, you know
Right.
but
Right.
I
Right.
think
Right.
first of all, but so then what I would guess is just be like, be able to hold space for your own emotion, if especially if it's something challenging for society, like anger is
Mhm.
really hard for people.
Right.
Anger and grief are really hard. So like if you're a dude and someone calls you a misogynist or whatever, or someone's telling you like you're being an asshole or whatever, just to take a second and realize how it feels to have that said, because it's really easy to lash out from that place,
Mhm.
and it's harder to not respond and just sit with like, whoa, like this person just like said something that really hurt my feelings. Because
Right.
I think what's happening a lot with men is that our feelings are actually getting hurt, and we feel like we're not allowed to feel hurt.
Exactly.
So we
Yeah.
just fight back. See, what people need to understand, and women too need to understand this about men. Patriarchy fucking sucks for guys, okay?
Yeah.
Because we're not allowed to cry, we're not allowed to feel, we're not allowed to have emotionality and express and process that with other people. Because then, and women, are responsible here too. It's like if you have a male partner, like homie probably needs to feel more than he's letting on, and needs you to be able to be emotionally strong for him as well. This is a heteronormative,
Right. Right.
moment that I'm having, because my internalized heteronormative activity. But like, if you're in a queer relationship too, just the party, that the person in the relationship who's in that more sort of masculine, you know colder, more calculated, sort of like, I gotta have it all together, like that person needs to also be able to feel feelings, because it just doesn't work to not have that happen, because that's when lashing out happens, and then it's so unproductive because we're just fighting each other. So I think step one is just to build some emotional intelligence within yourself, and just be like, to honor when you feel angry. I'm
Mhm.
really fucking angry right now, and this person just said this thing to me, and it's just like, okay, like, to go into that anger, like, why does that make you so angry, or like what's underneath that anger, or like, you know what do you want to accomplish right now, or like, what, like, do you just want to be right, or do you want to, like, have you considered what it's like to be this person?
Right. What
Maybe
triggered
this
this? Like, yeah, are you angry
maybe
because this person is an asshole, or are you angry because they said something that stuck you?
Yeah, and also to not take it personally. I think like depersonalizing is really important. And I didn't get this in my late 20s, when people started to come at me being like, "You're entitled," and da da da, and like, hey, guess what? I was a little bit entitled, and I didn't realize it, because I'm a white person, and I was raised with so much fucking privilege. I had no idea what privilege was, and
Right. You don't even know what it looks like.
that is a fact. And like, and white people in general, and men in general, need to look at it. It's like, you don't even know what privilege is, because you've never really had anyone call you out, and you've never really considered like, oh, what was it like to grow up in like a town that wasn't an upper middle class white town? What was it like to grow up in the hood? And like, I'm glad that I've spent a lot of time in cities, living in rough neighborhoods, and
Gives you a whole
in
different perspective.
gives you a whole different perspective, and really, and having a lot of friends who are people of color, and people, and women and trans people who are just from totally different circumstances. And I think it's so important that we just develop that social and emotional intelligence. And it really looks like not taking it personally, just being willing to be like, you know what, there's a lot of shit I don't know about people, there's a lot of stuff I don't know about other people's experience. And like, if this person's calling me a misogynist right now, man up, in the sense of like, don't take it personally.
Hmm.
And instead of lashing back out at that person, be be the person, be the man who says, you know what, women need to freak out right now, because it's been super messed up for women. So I'm going to be the man who's like, you know what, I'm going to really take a minute and look at what you said, because I know this isn't about me specifically. I know this is about men in general, and how men in general need to evolve, and we have our own healing that we need to do. Like, thank you for giving me something to think about, instead of like trying to shut her down. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like,
Exactly.
I
And
feel like,
that would shift the conversation so much as
because the
well.
woman
Oh my God.
because feminine energy needs to be able to go ballistic and feel like the masculine is just going to hold it. We had this
Hmm.
beautiful demonstration in the training down in Costa Rica, where a woman was invited to talk about everything that she hated about men and just freak out, and the man was invited to talk about everything that he hated about women.
Hmm.
And they all went through this very natural emotional process of like rage leading to grief, leading to hope, leading to love. and it was
Oh, that must have been
incredible.
so incredible. Oh my
It's
God.
like it was amazing to watch, and these two people were both so vulnerable and willing to go there. And I just want everyone to be able to see something like this. That what happens when, because we've been in like a gender war. Like the
It's
why I love
ridiculous.
astrology. Why I love astrology because we can zoom out and sort of look at like, why is this shit going down so intensely? And we've been this like gender war for like thousands of years. It's insane.
It's
And so
crazy.
it's like sometimes you got to think like, what happened in matriarchal times to create patriarchy in the first place? Like,
Yeah,
not that,
good question.
but like what happened, and so there's this mistrust, I think, that men have of women and of the feminine. They're afraid of it, they're afraid of the power of it. um but I think we all just need to, it sounds like such a hippie thing to say, but I really mean it. It's just like to have more love come in the process, like we,
Absolutely.
because especially with
That's
straight
got to be
people,
a part of the process. It just has to be.
we gotta love each other. We all want love, for God's sake. We all want to love and be loved. So this process of just women needing more respect is like, why wouldn't we as men want that for our sisters? Why wouldn't we want that? And so, and some of that means they need to freak out. They've been holding it back for so long. Like they've been keeping it tamped down, and the most awful things have been happening. And so we need to be strong as men,
Mm-hmm.
talk to each other,
Mm-hmm.
create like new standards of being
Right.
with ourselves and each other for men. That it's not like, I'm a gay man, but like it doesn't make you gay to process your feelings, dude. Like that is not, like,
Right.
they're not
Right.
synonymous.
That makes you human.
It makes, and like, what, listen to your gay friends, because they have a lot of emotional intelligence. And just to bring in a little two spirit magic, from being invited to so much Native American ceremony, which has been an honor and a
Oh
privilege.
my God, I'm so jelly. So jelly right now.
Well, like, listen, they had, and a lot of indigenous cultures. My friend was just telling me about India, legalizing gay sex, basically, or decriminalizing gay sex.
Welcome
Like,
to 2018. Good
I
job.
know. And like, there's been an honor and a respect for two spirit people, for people who are between the genders, who are, we're the freaking, I was told by a Native American medicine man a proverb about, how queer people, the LGBT, QIA, ABCDEFGHIJK,
Hmm.
community is here to here to hold the genders together. So like, if you got some
That's
gay
beautiful.
friends, maybe pull them aside and be like, how do I be less of a douchebag to women? Like,
Right.
what is it that women need? Like, how do I, de-escalate this conflict with this person who's calling me problematic and telling me I'm displaying toxic masculinity? Maybe make some friends with gay people. We have a lot of intelligence because we understand both sides so intimately. And it's
Absolutely.
more conscious. There's more conscious people than others, but in general, I
It
think there's
helps
going
to
to be an
have that
instinctive,
perspective.
yeah, that help that perspective. And just yeah, be willing to just evolve and alter, what it means to be a dude, what it means to be a guy with your guy friends, and to admit that, like, what if pursuing, I don't hang out in like dude bro circles, but you it like depicted in the, I'm not like totally opposed to it either, but you see it like depicted in the media, and it's just like, wow, like these conquests, and it's just like, is that what you really want? Or like, when was the first time you felt like you just needed to conquer a woman?
Right.
Like,
Where did that even come from?
where did
Like
that
what
even come
is
from? How was
this,
your
you know?
how was your relationship with your mom? Like, did you get enough nurturing as a child? Like, maybe just to invite men into like vulnerability, and that it in no way detracts from your masculinity to be vulnerable. It's actually really beautiful when men are able to be vulnerable and still strong and still able to just totally put their, like, the masculine, like I said, can really contain the feminine and just hold her in whatever state she's in, and just be, develop strength emotionally in that way, and get right with yourself, so that whatever gets thrown at you is something that you can hold, because it's also a part of yourself. That was the other thing, just that, like, there's nothing that shows up in your reality in a law of attraction universe that's not going on inside you. So there's your own feminine side that feels, you know um subjugated by you. It's your own inner
Hmm.
feminine that feels like she hasn't gotten to express, because even if we're, straight men or straight women, we still have the masculine and the feminine both within us. um
I
so
love that.
that's really important. It's just like if there's a woman freaking out at you in your reality, chances are there's the sensitive feminine part of your being that's just like, you know what, I'm not being heard. I haven't gotten to cry in 25 years, because every time I cried, my dad, smacked me. And my dad wasn't like that, but
Right.
but you
As an
but it,
example, right? Or
it's
somebody
an
made fun of me, or I wasn't allowed to do this. Like, yeah,
example. Like,
we've got to hold space for each other.
you gotta
That's
hold.
literally what we have to hold these spaces for each other. And we have to give each other permission to screw up and figure it out and get it right. Because I mean, that's really, and it changes so hard for people. Changes, and that was what I was kind of seeing too when I'm having these discussions. It's just like, well, how do I relate to women now, and how do I pick up women now? And like, there's all this fear that now all of a sudden, like, every guy is going to get accused of like sexual assault. As a woman, I'm like, what are you doing that you're afraid of this? Like, I don't
Yeah, man.
understand why it's so hard. Like, what
Where
are
are your
you?
intentions? Where are your
Right.
intentions?
Like, like, but
Well, not, yeah,
but I feel as well, because there's also some compassion there, because then I'm like, what were you taught? And
yeah,
and now you're in this place where I kind of want to recognize your fear, because I get that you're probably like really terrified of this, and that's sad on a level, because why are you so afraid? Like, I hope
yeah,
you go and have these conversations and find someone where you can kind of, find that safe space where you can be brutally honest, and have someone be brutally honest back to you, so you can figure it out, because that's
yeah,
what we really have to do. Like,
yeah,
stop fighting against this change, because it's coming. Like,
yeah.
that's it. It's a done
Well, it's
deal.
already
It's coming.
it's already here. It's already
Yeah.
happened, and we're already in it. We're inside the void right now, basically, of this shamanic, like, unprecedented, like, almost like level of transformation in human consciousness. But what I would say to what you were just talking about with guys, like, why do you feel like you're gonna, like, we need to look at sexuality. We need to look at
Hmm.
sex and desire and unshame it. So, like, this
Yes.
is
Oh my
part
God.
of
Yes.
this is really important. And the way that, it's also like in heteronormative culture, it seems that like men and women are really separated from each other, and we were all, most of us were like socialized that way, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
like boys over here, girls over here. And so
Right.
there's these gender roles instilled, and the queers and the feminists will be like, yes, exactly, it's all about the gender roles. I'm like, yeah, it is. And then
Because you guys are just smashing them and laughing at it.
we must destroy them all, and like that's cool, but there's also like just the energetics of masculinity and femininity that kind of go into the gender roles themselves, and that are also in our biology. The males, biologically, nature favors the female. The male is there for biodiversity. Clearly we don't need any more people on this planet,
Right.
so
Right.
like, I feel like there's so many more queer people coming out and being visible, because it's just like, I don't know, I see it as nature's population control. But like,
That's smart. I
but
like it.
like, yeah, I feel like, masculine, male sexuality is assertive. And when you throw power and privilege and entitlement on top of that, you get culture,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because if you're a woman, or you're a submissive, or if you're a bottom, or whatever, like, you want to receive, you still want to
Right.
be someone
Right.
to assert, and you still want to receive, and we
But it's
still,
in a healthy manner. It's like so
yeah,
different.
respectful manner, that's considerate, that's actually, empathically aware. I think what really bothers me energetically about a lot of, unconscious, entitled, you know dudes, is that it's like they barge into a situation, and they have no empathic, um sort of understanding of how they're impacting an environment. It's like they're, and yet women are socialized to freaking walk on eggshells and to feel everything, and to be
Right.
like hyper empathic and hyper attuned to the environment.
Right.
And
But we're not allowed to be emotional about it, because then we're just hysterical and crazy.
then you're hysterical and crazy, right? It's like the gaslighting, culture of patriarchy, for sure. And so men, need to learn how to feel their environments,
Yes.
to walk in and feel what's happening in a space before you assert yourself into it. Is this an appropriate time? And I think that that's one of the really beautiful things about the summer for Mars retrograde. It's just like, for all of us, the macrocosm of that in our relationships, of like, is it appropriate to assert this right now, or do I need to kind of chill and hold back? When's the right time? And then this, like, reconsideration of when do I use that, and even within our own selves, like, maybe I need to do some inner work right now, and it's not time to build my business. Maybe I just need to gestate a little bit longer, God knows when have I ever gotten permission to do that? Maybe I'm going to give myself permission now because the stars are just like screaming at me to evolve internally instead of trying to make it happen externally all the time. So, I just feel like we can bring this into our relationships and just like before we want to assert our desire and our agenda, also consider how might this person be feeling right now? Where's this person at? Like, hey, I just wanted to know, like, like like if you're worried that you're gonna be an aggressor in someone's reality, maybe ask her how she's doing first. Like, how, like, who are you? Do you even know who you're about to talk to? Do you even know who you're about to assert yourself into? And when she feels like you're really attuned to her, oh my goodness, like the
Whole
the,
different
the
scenario. Like,
the
wow.
ple- and the pleasure and the connection and the mutual satisfaction that's possible is just like ecstatic and incredible and amazing. So it's really about attunement. That's a big thing that we've all been robbed of attunement in
Yes.
patriarchal culture,
Oh my
men
God.
and women. Okay, this is not,
This lack of
this,
connection is like
it's
killing
lack
us.
of connection. Yeah, it's just, patriarchy. This is not about men are evil. When I say patriarchy, it's just literally the institutionalized and socially normalized, disrespect of feminine energy. And that goes for straight men too. That goes for the same people who are being called out right now. They need to be able to feel their feelings too. It's not fair for them to have to drive themselves home from open heart surgery. That's absurd.
Right.
But they think, but their conditioning is so deep that they don't. And men don't naturally go as deep as women a lot of the time into their feelings and the emotions and the gestational place. Like it's especially straight men who are just really super mostly masculine energy. It's hard for them to even have that insight to realize what they're doing. So it's like respect women, listen to women, make friends with women, attune yourself emotionally to women, be willing to hold space for whatever she's feeling, and then she'll teach you how to feel your damn feelings and maybe give you a shoulder to cry on and support you, and be with your brothers too, man. I worked with the Mankind Project, and that was really helpful.
Oh
Really,
wow. I
really
love
beautiful.
them. Yeah, I love following their work. They're great.
It's amazing. It's an archetypal, shadow work journey that you get to do with a group of guys, and then you get to, go to find these groups that meet up every week, and it's men becoming conscious with each other and really owning all the archetypes of the divine masculine, including the inner child, including the wild man within, and the king, warrior, magician, lover. Those strong major archetypes of healthy divine masculinity. It's really cool to be able to do men's work, and then you do your men's work, you get your shit figured out, and then you show up for women, and you don't have any issues, you don't have any disrespect. A healthy masculinity has zero interest in conquesting the feminine. Healthy masculinity wants to merge with that in a healthy way where it gets to be what it is and let the feminine be what she is. So it's, you can apply that to
Hmm.
any sexual orientation or really any situation within or without. So
I love it. Oh
yeah.
my God, I love it so much. All right, so with the last kind of 10 minutes that we have here, I would love for you to give us kind of a snapshot of kind of the rest of the year because we've talked about how crazy the summer has been. So, what's going on for the next whatever until like January?
Well, we still have Uranus square the nodes, so that's the awakening is not stopping. Like there's just, it's not
Full
stopping.
steam ahead. Deal with it,
Full
guys.
steam
And women
ahead.
too, just deal with it.
Everybody just try to embrace it. Try to be excited about it. Some- Sometimes it can feel a little daunting, just like, oh my God, like this is just too much. But it's just like, hey, you know what? Like it's time, and this is exciting. Just to try to have a positive attitude about it. But we've got Venus in her shadow. She's going to go retrograde. The retrogrades of 2018 are not over, and Venus goes retrograde on October 6th through Scorpio, back into late Libra in November, and then back into Scorpio in December. So this fall is really like, and it's Venus in early Scorpio squaring the nodes, which is an evolutionary, very strong demand. And so you've been having snake dreams lately. I'm not surprised. This is death and rebirth of our value systems, death and rebirth of our relationships, which is always the case in Venus retrograde anyway. Reassessing what our values are, how we make money, what our relationships are, what our relationship with our own self worth is. And Scorpio has to do with finding hidden power, breaking addictions, going into doing shadow work, merging, having to, release codependency and, do your own. It's just more. 2018 is just magnificently intensely about inner work. I
Wow.
just can't even. I've never seen this many aspects all in a row that just are like, yeah, keep doing you inside, and because as within, so without, as above, so below, man, it's all a reflection. It's all a mirror all the time. So like, really, this is such a deep invitation to understand what makes us tick and what we love and how we want to express love and how we are or are not loving ourselves when we how healthy or unhealthy our self-worth is. So this Venus retrograde through Scorpio is super major. The Uranus squaring the nodes, Venus making oppositions to Venus is opposite Uranus right now.
Hmm.
So just this away, deeper, as if that wasn't intense enough. It's like opposing Uranus, with Mars on the south node and with Black Moon Lilith. It's almost like I almost my brain literally almost explodes when I think about the aspects happening in this grand nodal cross. I tried to get into it in my last video. I'm gonna have to like make another video about it because it's just such a complex math problem. But I think it really, the masculine is going through this. The masculine just fucking going through it? Let's just be honest. The masculine is going. I've been saying this all summer. Shout out to the men who are like waking up and being conscious right now because the masculine's really going through it. We're getting our asses handed to us, and it's also beautiful, and it's also, I think, really fulfilling. And it's back to what I said about Jupiter and Scorpio. Like when we can let go of what we thought the program was, we're actually really liberated and freed if we allow ourselves to trust something bigger than ourselves, like a bigger picture. And then we really get more than we bargained for, and we're releasing all this old conditioning. I think a lot of Scorpio has to do with, because it has to do with sex and sexuality and intimacy. It's also this place where we're like breaking with our familial conditioning. We're breaking with our, ancestral conditioning. We still got Pluto in Capricorn. Um, Pluto stations direct, which is the ruler of Scorpio, on September 30th. Pluto's been retrograde since April. So, the transformation is going to move outward again. We're really going to break a lot of new ground. With Mars and Saturn just went direct, picking up steam, picking up the pace. And so even though we've got this Venus retrograde, asking us to do a lot of inner work, our outer lives are going to start to move forward a lot, in a way that is sort of relieving, because like you said, this summer was just like this unrelenting, with Mars retrograde, it's like no one's getting anywhere. And then
Hmm.
with Saturn retrograde at the same time, but like they both just went direct in Capricorn. So, over the last few weeks. And then Pluto goes direct in Capricorn at the end of the month. So I think October, even though it's the start of the Venus retrograde, there's going to be a lot of like plans, forging ahead, and um, but it's still going to have this tone of like Venus retrograde. Like what do you really value? But what are you really about? Are you really about this? Is it and it could be sudden unpredictable changes in income or in financial situations or in relationships. Relationships ending, new ones beginning that are super high vibe and conscious and aligned. So I would just invite everyone into uh, just a deeper patience with life and a deeper surrender with life, and to really evolve your own spiritual practice, and to really begin to see that everyone in your reality is an aspect of you, whether or not you're conscious of it. So basically every time you're triggered, because there's going to be plenty of triggers with Venus and Scorpio, then opposite Uranus, then going freaking retrograde, square the damn nodes. So like that's a trigger. Square Mars, square Lilith. Okay. I see why my head wants to explode. It's just like,
I know, it's like firecrackers just going off, just boo, boo,
like
boo, boo.
these are major aspects of awakening. Of Lilith is about the wild, irrational, repressed feminine. Um, this is huge. This is like really cataclysmic shifts in our consciousness and our relationships with ourselves. So I would invite people to try to find a sense of groundedness and stability in yourself and in your own soul in the transformation. So just like, all right, like I've got my spiritual practice really strong. I've got my self-love practice really strong. I've got really like solid friends around me that even if we trigger each other, we can talk about it. Like we're really needing to become more conscious than we've ever been before on the planet. and everything is inviting us to do that. So relationships are going to be tested, and they're going to be a source of evolution and awakening. And we could see a lot of changes externally based on how much we do or don't resist the inner promptings to evolve and look at stuff that's been buried. So
I love this. So basically, what I'm hearing then is, oh my God, so much. But it's really just more about us going within and doing the work, because what we're kind of, our internal is manifesting outwardly. Like that's literally
always
is what is happening. So that's kind of why I feel like it's so important for us to be, these reminders. Do your inner work. Do your work. What do you value? What are you valuing? Because what you're feeling, you are creating. That's coming. That's coming. So it's
truly,
really
truly.
interesting.
We all have the power. I highly recommend The Completion Process by Teal Swan to anyone who wants to pick up that book. I'm not endorsed by her to say that, but she's one of my teachers, and this is the most emotionally intelligent thing I've ever seen, and so practical and so user friendly. And it's this beautiful bridge between like kind of this more law of attraction sort of new age thought with like depth psychology, and creating an emotional intelligence around trauma and how it affects our core beliefs, which affects what we're able to manifest or not manifest.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is what the law of attraction community, I think, really needs an upgrade. And
Mm-hmm.
this
Absolutely.
book is the most succinct, direct, clear process with how to work with that. It's the difference between like rowing a boat with like an anchor and rowing a boat like without an anchor. It's like those anchors are our traumas that we experience. So this goes for everyone: gay, straight, black, white, male, female, whatever. Like we all have trauma, emotional trauma of sorts. It doesn't matter if it was overtly inflicted by a crazy person or a crazy parent in childhood, or if it was a well-intentioned but upsetting thing that happened in childhood by a well-intentioned person. It doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma is trauma, and we're needing to develop a greater compassion and like I think a gentleness. Like be
Mm-hmm.
gentle with yourself. These are really harsh aspects. These are
Yeah.
harsh aspects. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind. Be kind to the inner child. Truly, I mean, it's like this is something that we're not really taught how to do
Not at
in
all.
mainstream culture.
I went to my therapist a couple of times. Huge opponent of therapy. I feel like everybody needs therapy, because you're right. We've all got this trauma, and she literally, because I told her that I needed something to work with that wasn't like crazy self helpy. I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and like write affirmations to myself every day. Like I'm not. No. So I was like,
Well,
what can I do to
yeah.
like help heal this? And she literally like had me write letters to my younger self, like literally, like, and I found that to be just very, very enlightening and healing, and just about how you treat that inner child. I mean, because
Yeah.
I've always, felt like I had that inner child, and I've been, playful and goofy and that sort of thing, and then you also realize that you haven't been nice to that inner child at all.
No,
Like, and you're
we've
quiet,
been abandoning.
yeah, just really
Been
mean.
and we're conditioned to do that. It's like the world's a scary place to the inner child, and we learn to dismiss and abandon when we really need to be holding it closer. But
Hmm.
I think especially men, it's like it's so easy to feel a sense of shame around working with the inner child, because it means you fall apart. It means you get messy. You turn into a
Yeah.
puddle. You know, but guess what? The caterpillar fully liquefies before the butterfly is formed. We need to turn into puddles, and like affirmations to someone who feels a sense of trauma and unworthiness in their being, affirmations aren't going to do shit, because it's just going to remind you of how much you hate yourself. To
Right.
that aspect of you that you haven't dealt with, it's always about addressing the resistance, which is where we're not conditioned to go. The resistance is usually a dark, scary, emotionally painful place to go, but we need to go there. We need to be brave. That's when you put it all together. The Mars with Lilith squaring that Venus and Scorpio, opposing that, Uranus and Taurus, bringing it back to that North Node in Leo. Like that's how to put it all together. Is like bravery in the name of like our inner beings. Like I'm going to be so brave that I'm going to go into the darkest part of my emotional landscape and love that part of myself and be with it and validate it as long as it needs, because we need emotional validation like we need water and food and shelter. Truly, we really do. We need
Yeah.
it. When people kill themselves, it's because they feel that there is no connection and no one knows what they're going through. It's complete isolation, and this is an issue in our society: suicide,
Yeah.
and in the LGBT community as well. Really, teen suicides. I just finished watching 13 Reasons Why, which is an incredible Netflix series about emotional intelligence with teenagers and how suicide affects people and what kids are going through. And just we really need to be brave enough to validate how we really feel and be willing to feel not okay. That's something that I really want people to hear. It's really truly okay to feel not okay, because emotions, the way I think we get afraid, and the pharmaceutical industry doesn't really make it much easier, but
No,
it's
it
like,
doesn't.
if you feel sad, you have clinical depression and you need XYZ medication.
No, motherfucker, you just feel sad.
No, you exactly, because you're fucking alive. You're and it's correct to be sad if you've been through trauma. It's correct to be sad when you see brown kids in cages. It's correct to
Right.
be sad when like the rainforest is being depleted for palm oil. It's correct to be sad when endangered species are going extinct, and the California is on fire, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's correct. It's correct. So I really believe that this is like the thesis for my whole life, is like, I believe if people feel more, like truly feel more, then we will create healing on the planet, because it'll be so unbearable what we actually discover when we actually get honest about how we feel. I don't think that we're really going to change things until we start to feel more deeply what's actually going on here.
I would agree with that 100%. And I can also speak to how difficult that is because I'm like super
It
creative.
hurts.
So I struggle
It
with
hurts.
depression as well. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's just so hard to feel that because you just get
it is.
overwhelmed.
It is.
It's like feeling the pain of the world sometimes. It just fucking sucks. Like it's
It
all,
does.
and you can almost get like stuck there. But
Right.
I think it's important to do it because you've got to recognize it. Like you've got to stop and you've got to see this and you've got to, I don't know if hold space is the right word for it, but at least
Yes,
acknowledge that it's
absolutely.
there.
Yes, definitely hold space. So, I mean, I have a practice of this. I really see it as like emotions as like weather systems, and there's
Mm,
nothing wrong with it. It's like, if it's in the collective conscious experience, the collective unconscious experience, if it's happening, like, you're gonna feel it, because we're all connected. We are all connected, and that's really scary for a lot of people to consider, who have
oh,
these
yeah.
boxy lives of just, it's just my own, controlled experience. Those of us who have more water in our charts, who have more Pisces or 12th house or water house, planet positions and aspects to Neptune and aspects to the moon and all these things, like aspects to Lilith, we're gonna feel more than the average person. Aspects to Chiron, these are the soulful Pluto. These are the soulful, deep, feeling based archetypes and planets. And when we have those energetic imprints, we're supposed to be the people that feel what's going on. So I think the invitation now is to really, we got to like come together. It's like Mars is direct in Aquarius on the south node, can also indicate some karmic unfinished business. So I think we need to meet up with people who are of like minds. We need to be really honest, be shameless and fearless, and then we need to come together. It's time to come together in our truths, in our authenticity, and to start making that socially normal. And I see steps being taken in the media and even popular culture, and dare I say even like Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
for examples of what that looks like. What does it look like for people to come together without the masks on? And I think that that's really where the healing is. That's where the money is. That's where the power really is. That's how we're really going to move into the new paradigm, is really that coming together. Once you've done that inner work, it's like, take that, do that inner work, and then socialize from that place. Be discerning, and what you will draw to you will be a reflection of the love that you now have for that dark part of yourself, the goth girl within,
Right,
who just
right.
is always feeling how fucking desperate and intense everything is. It's like, yeah, feel it so that it can pass. It's when you resist feeling it that it doesn't pass. So, and there's when you go into grief and when you go into depression, there's really shamanically painful moments. And so, just shout out to anyone who has the courage to sit and feel the pain of the world, like you just said. I think it's really important to be able to go into it. I think we're afraid that if we go into it, that we'll never come out of it.
Right.
But
And I think we're afraid of what that looks like too, because I feel like, just everyday life is so hard and just having to deal with our own inner shadows, right? And do all this inner work. And then you turn on the news and you see, brown kids in cages and there's like this feeling of helplessness. Like,
chill with
oh my fucking God, how do I fix that,
So, okay, I don't want to say put your head in the sand with the news, but like, chill with the news, people.
True, true.
Truly chill with
True.
the news. I mean, really stop and think about it. Why do I need to know what's going on all over the world all the time? I mean, yes, we're building social consciousness, dawning of the age of the Aquarius. Yes, yes, yes. But like, do I really need every update on what fucked up shit Trump has done today? Or like
Right.
the fact that do I need to really, grill it into my subconscious that like the vice president wants to electrocute me because I'm gay and to trying to make me straight? Like, really? Like, do I need to fill my brain with that? We need to look. I want us to really. I'm serious about this. We need to look at like how are we giving our power away to too much information? It's
Yes. I love
literally
that.
we're diluting our own intuition. We're diluting our own inner promptings because we're fucking distracting ourselves with all the bullshit that there is to know. There's too much information to know. We are not we're going to look back on this time and be like, "Oh, that was the information overload time. That's when we didn't know when to put the phone down. That's when we didn't know when to get off the internet. That's when we didn't know when to turn off the news. That's when we were still giving our power over to the new technology. We need to take our power back from technology and stop polluting your psyche. Meditate. Don't glue yourself to them. There's nothing that you can do, really. So what can you do? You have self-mastery. Develop self-mastery. Unplug, from being so overly reliant on what we're being fed gives us security, you know?
Absolutely.
It's easier said than done. I'm an astrology weirdo who's made a lot of choices to like, make money in a way that is not 9 to 5, 40 hours a week.
Shout out to that.
You know, however, a lot of people don't, haven't been able to do that. And I've made a lot of sacrifices and strange choices so that I could do this. Okay.
Right.
So, like, shout out to people who have to show up 40 hours a week and play a specific role for a boss that you might not believe in because you want financial security, because that's what the system tells you need. But you don't have to turn on the news when you get off work. You don't have to be involved in social conversations that are fear-based. You don't have to keep feeding that energy because it is an energy force. And it's it's
Absolutely.
it's not just mainstream media, it's content and TV. We're addicted to being afraid, we're addicted to, feeling powerless, and it's like, go play that out in a different area of your life, but try to practice, what would it be like to just, okay, here's a prompting. Okay, I know that there's like kids in cages. How much do I actually need to know about this? How much do I need to submerge myself in this today? Maybe what's going on in my own heart is more important, because when I transmute that, then the imprint and the impact that I'm having on everyone around me is more loving and more accepting, and I'm now part of the solution rather than stewing in the problem. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Because we've got to back away from it, because I feel like the only way we're going to change is through this self mastery. And people forget that step. It's so easy to forget because the self mastery part is the most difficult. It's more easy to, like, I can go onto Reddit and I can find something to be angry about, and I can join in these
yes,
threads and we can talk
yes,
about it and we can, do
and it's
that and hit the pavement, but we don't do the self mastery part. So
the
all this,
self.
we're literally just recycling the crap energy that we're trying to get rid of. So it's like we can't skip that step. We've got to disconnect and reconnect to us. And I love what you said about giving your power, because I scream this all the time. Stop giving it away. Stop it. Stop.
Stop. And we need to be asking ourselves, look at the aspect of yourself that wants to be powerless, that's
Mm,
more comfortable being powerless. I mean, this is
right.
shadow work. This is self-mastery. This is resistance work. Like, why am I why do I need to be powerless? Like, where's the need? Where's that need coming from? Why am I afraid of my power? Why am I afraid to turn my power to a more peaceful place? Am I addicted to the drama? Am I addicted to chaos? Why am I addicted to drama? And we need to be asking ourselves these questions. And I think that there's an endless amount of distractions for anybody. It's just, when are you gonna turn off the TV and go into the inner world? That's where people are most scared to go. It's not some
Absolutely.
horror movie. It's really like, we're afraid of looking at our own trauma because it's painful. We're afraid to, and we're socialized into believing that pain is wrong. It's wrong to feel pain. And then in the spiritual field, the law of attraction community, the popular one, like, oh, if you're feeling pain, you shouldn't be feeling pain because now you're just creating more pain. It's like, that is absurd.
That's great.
That is
Calm down. Calm down.
absolutely.
It's not happy, happy, joy, joy all the time. If you're going through a real spiritual awakening, you are in the closet, huddled up in a corner, fucking crying. That's what you are
Yeah,
doing.
that's part of it. That's part of it. And then it's beautiful. And then you
Oh
feel more
yeah.
connection. And then you watch synchronicities start to happen. And you're like, wow, I just freaking unplugged from the matrix, man. And I am like, there's everything I need constantly comes to me, and I couldn't predict it or tell you how. I cannot predict it. There's so much that we don't know. It's like, shout out to Great Mystery. you know, this is Scorpio, right? This is high vibe Scorpio. It's like there is a deep dark void from which all life emerges that I will never ever know with my conscious mind, and I trust and surrender to that it has my best interest in mind, that my higher self, that my soul has my best interest in my awakening in mind, and I'm going to operate from that place and just sort of keep coming back to that inner pillar within, of truth and the intuitive barometer. And there's ways to develop that if you don't have it developed, like yoga, meditation, doing this, inner work. What happens when you start to feel more authentic emotion is that you don't even want to go to those threads anymore, or
Oh yeah,
those
it's a whole
those
different
online
feeling.
things, because
You're just
you're
done.
just you're just like, I don't even want to spend. What am I creating in this world? I want to be a creator now. I want to co-create with people waking up who are of like minds, what I want to see on the planet. So I'm not even gonna get mixed up in all that negativity, because I really feel what it's like to feel right with myself and with source. And that's a feeling that's, you can't even really, it's hard to describe if you haven't really started walking down that
Hmm.
path. But
You got to
it's a
experience it.
whole thing.
You have to take this for a test drive. Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible
And
to just visit
like,
it.
celebrate the ego dissolving, celebrate losing your shit every day. Like, celebrate it. It's fucking awesome. Like, it's great. It's like the only game in town, I'm telling you. And you feel like a crazy person when you compare yourself to what people are telling you a normal person should look like. But that's the whole thing, is what normal people are saying is causing pain and destruction, and has been causing pain and destruction, and and subordination of life for way too long. So it's like, this is a messy process. Being human is messy. Going through a spiritual awakening is fucking messy, and it's beautiful. The Native Americans always talk about the beauty way, like walking in a beauty way. I love that. Just that when you're in a soulful place, even if you're full of tears, there's so much beauty in the ecstatic realm of emotionality, of just feeling, whatever it is that you feel. I mean, I could go on for like 3 hours about this. I know we're kind of like
No worries.
need
No, it's
to wrap
fine.
up.
It's fine. It's
Get off
because
my
you know what?
soap.
It's great information and people need to hear it. So it's absolutely. This is the gospel according to James.
Oh
Let's
my
do it
God.
right
I
here.
get away. Cool.
Oh no, it's good. It's you know what? It's a lot to process, but it's work that we absolutely have to do. We
Right on.
absolutely have to do it. So, James, again, thank you so much. I don't want to ask another question just because we'll talk for another 3 hours. Not that I'm mad about it, but people would be like, Jesus Christ, Crystal, how long is your podcast?
Cut off the podcast already.
So, James, thank you for being here. Thank you for being so authentic. Thank you so much for standing in your truth and holding space and doing that inner work, because I know how crazy that shit is. Please tell everybody where they can connect with you, where they can find their YouTube videos, where they can, your music, the readings, all of it. Go. Just plug the heck out of yourself.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. And you can, James Panther astrology.com is my website. Astrology for the people. Astrology for the People is the name of my YouTube channel. It's the same handle on Instagram, Astrology for the People. I've got usually a new video every week about something astrologically related, and you can hear me get tangential about whatever for like 15 or 20 minutes every week if you want to hear more there. That's kind of my main platform. Um, yeah, and thank you so much, Crystal, for it's been a really beautiful back and forth with you, super authentic. And yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Fantastic. All right, guys, that is James. You are doing yourself a disservice if you do not go and check him out. Please go and do that, especially there. I guarantee you there will be a video that he puts up that resonates with you, or you'll learn something. It'll be great. Go and check him out on his website. And everybody, I will see you during the next WooWoo Hour podcast. Hopefully next month. We'll see. You guys know that I'm very discerning with the guests that I bring on here, and now you know why, because we have great conversations. So thank you all so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next month. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to this recent edition of the WooWoo Hour podcast. If you like this work and the other creative content that I produce, I really encourage you to go and check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/Mind of a Creator. There is some great exclusive content that is only available for Patreons monthly. Go and check it out and be the hero in my story.